Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. Welcome to this pdfToolbox webinar. There are many of you here, so let me explain how this is going to work. What I'm going to do here is run through some slides. Don't worry, not too many. I don't like slides. So we'll do mostly demo and look at the product itself. But I'm going to run through some slides, then I'm going to show the application. I already have a slide with some questions I've received at the end of the presentation, and I will take the time to answer those specifically. And then if you have questions during this webinar, you have in your GoToWebinar control panel, you have a section where you can enter those questions. So please do so as I go through the presentation. At the end of the webinar, I will have a look at all of those questions and we'll make sure that those get answered as well. If there is something that you want to ask, but you don't want to shout it out loud for the whole group, then you have my email address on there. On this slide, and it will be on the last slide as well. Feel free to send me an email and I'll respond to your questions directly afterwards. So this webinar is about pdfToolbox desktop, and well, it's, I think, quite normal that you have questions what you can do with this tool, especially when you hadn't heard about pdfToolbox before, and for example, you've gotten this through the QuarkXPress promo earlier. So what can you do with pdfToolbox? Well, I have a small slide here with stuff that you can do, and if that is not enough, I have a second slide, and I can come up with a third slide. And so bottom line, there is really a lot that you can do with pdfToolbox, and some of it is relatively simple, some of it is a little bit more complex and will require some configuration beforehand. And what I will try to do here is show you the basics, make sure that you understand how this product works and what the normal way is of accomplishing something with pdfToolbox. And then we can go into more details and explain more advanced things afterwards. So what is this tool? Well, first of all, it is both a plugin for Adobe Acrobat and a standalone application. And you don't really have to choose. When you install pdfToolbox Desktop, it will install both the plugin and the standalone, unless in the installer you tell it not to install the plugin version. Why do we have both? Well, some people feel more comfortable working within the Adobe Acrobat user interface, and then you can do so using the plugin. Some people feel better not using the Adobe Acrobat user interface, and in that case, you can use the standalone version. If you use the application, the standalone application, you don't need to have Adobe Acrobat installed. It is completely self-reliant. So actually, you can work with pdfToolbox Desktop without even having Acrobat Pro or Reader or anything else from Adobe for that matter on your system. So that can be quite important. In the demo, I will use the standalone myself because I find it easier to work with than the plugin. Plus, it's much easier to see the user interface. It's not buried under all of the stuff in Acrobat itself. So I will be using the standalone myself. This application is easy to use. I will show you the switchboard where you have ready-made actions that you simply click on and things start to happen. I will also show you the visualiser for inspection that can help in some cases to figure out why a document could be a problem or if it is going to be a problem. But I will also show you that you can do things that go a lot further than the ready-made actions that you have in the switchboard. You can make your own profiles, and that's preflight profiles, not color profiles. And a profile is a way to collect things that you want to check, things that you want to fix in a document. You can take a step further and have variables to make profiles dynamic, which is a cool thing. And you have process plans to introduce processing logic. And at the end of this demo that I'm going to do, one of the questions that I already got, I will build a little process plan to show you how that works as well. And this is all manual, so all point and click if you want. You open a PDF document, you modify that PDF document, or you check it, and then you have a result file. Very nice and easy. I'm not going to dwell on this, but there are also automated versions of the application, so you can do all the things that you can do in pdfToolbox desktop, also using hot folders, or for developers, you have versions that can be integrated into a website or into another application, and so on. So let's take a quick look here. Like I said in the beginning, if you have questions, don't wait until the end. Just already type them in this GoToWebinar user interface. That way you don't forget what you wanted to ask. And if I see your question while I'm talking, I can perhaps already answer it. So this is pdfToolbox Desktop. This is the application itself, and I'm going to clean up my desktop a little bit. I have some files here. Don't ask me why, but all of my files for some reason use, or most of my files that I have here use penguins of some sort. I have file here. When I open documents in pdfToolbox, it is shown just as it would be shown in Adobe Acrobat itself. Actually, the display that you get here is exactly the same as the one you would get in Adobe Acrobat, because pdfToolbox also uses a built-in Adobe PDF library. So you're sure that what you see here is going to also be what gets printed at the end. And that's important. Things like overprint preview are always switched on in pdfToolbox. So you have no way of forgetting this or misconfiguring this. What is important also is that when I open a document in here that is a pre-press generated document in some way here, when I open a document that is destined for print and it was created according one of the pdfX standards, then that will already be mentioned at the bottom. At the bottom here, at the bottom of the window, you can see this pdfX3 badge. This badge appears because the PDF file claims to be a pdfX3 document. We have not done preflight at this point, so the only thing pdfToolbox is doing right now is looking at the document, seeing that there is metadata in the document that claims that this document is pdfX3 compliant, and then it shows us that this is the case here. It also shows me, in this case, an IFRA 26 ISO newspaper profile. It also shows me that there is an ICC profile embedded in this document. This is the document profile or output intent profile that was saved into this document. Yeah. So if that information is there, you get it right at the bottom here. And then there are three main areas of the application that I want to point out. The first one is under Tools and is called Switchboard, and that will bring up this smartphone-alike user interface. The second one is again under Tools and is called Profiles, and that will bring up a profile window for me, and we'll talk a little bit more in a second about that one as well. For now, I'm going to hide it again. And then the third area is everything that you see here under the View menu, where it says visualize up to the bottom. You have object inspector, output preview, compare documents, and so on. So all of these menu items that you have here are the visualizer, and that technology gives you a very visual way to examine PDF documents and see what is potentially going wrong with them. So how does this work? Well, let's talk about the switchboard to start with. In this switchboard, I have groups of functionality, and they start with arrange, for example, which is everything to do with imposition. You can see a group about pages, documents, colors, fonts, and so on. In each of these groups, when you click that group, it will show you the actual functionality you have available in that particular group. So when I click on arrange, I get a number of things I can use that have to do with imposition. So I could do step and repeat, say that I want 5 by 4, which spacing I want, whether I want cut marks or not, which page size I want. So in this case, I'm going to ask pdfToolbox to calculate how big the page would be if I want 5 by 4. And then by clicking execute or batch, you will do this function, step and repeat, that we're working on either the document that is open, that would be execute, or you can choose a folder and process up to 100 documents at once. So let me show you the execute function first. I simply click that, and pdfToolbox generates a stepped version of what I had. So now I have 5 by 4, which is what I asked for. There is some distance in between each of these, and I have added cut marks to the end of the document as well. Okay. And I can go to revert here to return to my original document. So you select the functionality that you want in the switchboard, click on execute, and it will run that function that you've selected and that you've customized here using all of these settings on the document that you have open. Or you can click batch, and batch will allow me to specify a folder, and then it will run the same function, so the step and repeat in this case, on all the files in that folder. Okay, so this is of course very nice, and this works for arrange, but what other types of things can I do? Well, in the arrange, I can not only do step and repeat, I can make a booklet, I can do create an enup, do fill page. If a document was exported from QuarkXPress, for example, using reader spreads, then the pages can be cut in half, or I can take single page documents and combine them into reader spreads. And if you want to go a little bit further than that, I have a complete imposition engine where I can do more complex impositions. And sometimes this is used for impositions. Sometimes it is used for something else. And so I could select something here and then say execute. And this uses the imposition engine to generate a kind of an approval sheet or a proofing sheet where it takes the incoming file, scales it into an area on an A4 document in this particular case, and then adds some background and some information into this file. And of course, the layout could change, how exactly you use this could change, but it gives you something that you can use to create a proof sheet or a sign-off sheet or whatever else you might at this point have in mind. So that's one part of this arrange section. Now, the other sections, I will not go into all of the details for all of them, but I do want to give you a bit of an idea what you can expect. Present is functionality that has to do with presentation files. So if I have a presentation file that comes in where I have slides, I could use, for example, the handout functionality to create handouts where you have, in this particular case, for example, 3 slides on one A4 sheet, and then with space for notes on the side. Functionality regarding presentations. Then you have standards that does a number of checks. So this is where you can already find some pre-flight profiles that allow you to check your document and modify your document. I am not going to show those here. It makes more sense to look at those in the profile window. Prepress has a number of really pre-press related tasks, but some of them you could also use on documents that were just created out of QuarkXPress, for example. I point to flattened transparency as one example. If you have a document that was exported and the transparency in that PDF is still live after being saved by QuarkXPress, then you can use flattened transparency to flatten all transparency in the PDF document. You can add marks here. I can create a correct trim box from the marks that you have in the document. There is something here to fix overprint and knockout, for example, fix problems with black and white objects. But actually, in most cases, I would not use this. I would use the profiles functionality where you can build multiple of these fixes into one profile, and it becomes much quicker and much easier to run them on your PDF documents. Under documents, there is already one question from I think Michael, who can that I can answer. Michael, yes, you can convert PostScript to PDF or PDF to PostScript for that matter. If I would look here at PostScript to PDF, then you'll be able to see that I can select the PDF setting. And in my library here, I don't have one, this demo library, but I could go to one of the libraries that you also have when you install pdfToolbox. And then you will see that I have a number of settings in there already. And if you would go to this action button and say Manage PDF Settings, pdfToolbox will bring up a folder for you, and in that folder are job options files. So these are the same settings that are used by Acrobat Distiller, for example, and actually the Distiller engine is built into pdfToolbox. So if you have EPS or PostScript files that you want to convert to PDF, then you can do that here by selecting the file and saying execute. Or even simpler, if I have a PostScript or an EPS file, I can drag it on top of my main pdfToolbox window and it will be converted as well. What you also have here, for example, is this image to PDF. So if you have a PNG or a JPEG or a TIFF file and you want to convert that into a PDF document to work with it in the rest of your workflow, then you can also do that. And I can go in the opposite direction as well. I can look at the file that I have here and export a TIFF. This could be a higher resolution TIFF. There really isn't any limit here, so I could go to 1200 dpi or whatever I want. Or I could do the opposite and say, no, I want a PNG file with transparency, and maybe it is as a preview, and I select 150 as a resolution. When I run that and I save it on my desktop, let me see, hold on just 1 second. It's the downside of having a slow old USB drive connected to your system. Here we go. So when I run that, it will generate a PNG file for me at the resolution I asked for. The PNG contains overprint preview, it does smoothing. So it can be used as a perfect preview file of what this PDF would look like when it is printed. So that's what you find in this document section, everything that has to do with the document itself. Next to that, I have specific functionality for specific objects. So fonts would allow me to convert fonts to outline, for example, or embed or subset a font. Colors would allow me to work with color, whether it is converting RGB to CMYK or converting spot color to CMYK or converting a document to black and white. All of that can again be done with a number of mouse clicks. And so there you go. Now we have a black and white document. Images is functionality that is related to images, so downsampling, recompression, going from zip to JPEG compression, for example, sharpening images. You have specific functionality for layers, and we have a specific tab in here for large format print. Again, I'm not going to go into all the details, but you can see the kind of functionality that you have here. Because there was another question about this, I'm going to close this and open some more penguins for you. Here we go. This is a banner, and now I could say add bleed. I can specify how much bleed I want and where. And I have different strategies to create bleed. So I could mirror what I have in here, or I could say repeat last pixel, which for this type of file would be ideal. And again, when I run that, and I save my document, you can see that in this case, pdfToolbox added bleed at the bottom, at the top. I could have done the same at the left and right hand side, of course, and you can specify how it creates bleed and how much. So that's also a possibility. Okay, I will come back in my in one of the answers to the questions I had beforehand on the switchboard with one more thing. But for now, I'm going to close this and go to profiles. Again, I am not going to go into all of the details, but in profiles, you have a list of the preflight profiles that you can use. And when you install pdfToolbox, you will also have this pull down menu at the top, and it will already have 5 items in it. You have this device link, essentials, then you have PDF standards, prepress color and transparency, and you have shapes, variables, JavaScript, and place content. Those are libraries with profiles and process plans in them that can serve as examples of what you can do. And of course, you can then take any of those profiles and run them on your document. But you can just as well duplicate such a profile and then make modifications to do exactly what you want to do in your workflow. Yeah, and let me give you an example. So if I take this nice document, I could say, well, I really want to check whether this particular document is suitable. One of the profiles I have in here is a profile from the Gantt workgroup, or rather a profile that is compliant with the specifications from the Gantt workgroup. This one is built on top of the PDFX1A standard. And now I can either say analyze or analyze and fix. And you guess what the difference is. Analyze will run all of the checks in this profile, and it will tell me what is potentially wrong with my file. So what you can see here is that there are some lines that are not thick enough. There is ink coverage above 340%. I have some image related problem, but it simply shows me what is wrong. It does not modify the document. That's analyze. If I say analyze and fix, pdfToolbox will not only run the checks in that particular profile, but it will also run the fixes. That's why it asks for an output file, And in this case, it runs through my document and it fixes all the things that I specified in this profile. So all the fixes that I deem to be not dangerous and acceptable are done. You have a list of what gets fixed, and I have a list of some warning messages that remain. But if you look at the bottom of this document now, this document was just converted into a valid pdfX1A document. Yeah? So profiles are a way to check and fix, and you can see that reflected in this window as well. The first tab of this window shows the profiles that I have available. The second tab shows me all of the individual checks that I have created. And the third tab shows me all of the individual fixes that I have created. And now when I select this profile and I would create a copy, so duplicate, in here I have the list of checks. In the middle, I have the list of all the checks that are in this particular profile and the list of all the fixes that are in this particular profile. And on the right-hand side, I have the list of all of the fixes that I have. So let's say I want, I don't know what we have here. I think I have some stuff with varnish. Let's say that I want to add a varnish layer to my document. I have created a fix that does that. Well, I can now easily add that into my profile. And from this point on, when I run this copy of my profile, it will also create a varnish layer. Of course, you have to carefully create the fixes and the checks that you want, but you can create them, you can put them together in a profile, and you can run that profile with a single click on your document. And that will either just check, or it will check and then fix the document as well. I will talk a little bit more about that later on, but I want to show you the third part of what we have in here, and that was the visualizer. So let's say that I just created this document and I have pre-flighted it, and I want to know whether it is now pdfX 1A compliant. Fine, I know that, it says so here at the bottom. So I want to know whether it's really production ready. And one of the questions I have is about ink coverage. So I could go to visualize ink coverage. And then what this shows me is which parts of the document are over the ink limit specified in here. So I have set something very, very low in this particular case. This was a customer that wanted 180 as an ink limit. Not much we can do with that. So let's make this 270, for example, or if we're doing offset, we could make it 300. Well, each time I change the ink limits, you get to see which part of this document is actually over that ink limit, and that is a good way to judge whether this particular document would be suitable or not. So in this case, I can see that this area is over. There is a problem with this Mercedes-Benz logo because it's clearly over the ink limit. And then what I have here in magenta around the document is normal. That is 400% and more. And that's because, of course, this is registration information. So that I am not worried about. It is outside of the trim box, but inside the trim box, it shows me what is wrong. And you can use this visualizer for more things. For example, I could look at the page border and maybe examine the bleed area to see that the red here is the trim box. Well, what do I have that comes close to the trim box, and does it extend far enough into the bleed? So another visual tool to help you judge what is going on. Same way I could look at individual separations. This will be very boring for this file because it doesn't contain much except for CMYK. But if I open a file that has a whole bunch of spot color in it, then this will help me judge whether these colors are correct. For example, I could go look at the spot color called cut. And then unfortunately, you can see that I made a mistake here. There should be a cut line here. And if I go to fold, you'll see that it was accidentally incorrectly applied in this particular design. Yeah, so I can always see the regular page view as well. And what you can see here as well is that it shows you for each ink how much of that ink is used, both in percentage of the trim box and in square centimeters, so in surface area in this particular case. Okay, so once more to recap, and then I'm going to look at the questions I already had in the presentation, first of all, because there are some things that I will show as part of that, and then I will look at all of your questions. Usually I have to ask for questions a number of times, but in this case, I seem to get questions very, very easily from people. That's very good. So I will come to all of them, don't worry. But let's recap just for a second. You have the switchboard with easy to use functionality. So basically fill out the, so let me see if I have one that has some parameters in here. This is actually a bad example. So fill out the values that you want and then click execute, and that will change my document. That's how you use point and click switchboard. After that, I have tools, profiles, and that brings up this profile window where I can choose profiles that are in the standard libraries or that I build myself for particular use cases. And I have this visualizer where I can visually inspect the document. There are some other areas in the product that you can explore and see what they do, but most of them are a little bit more technical, and I don't want to go too deeply in here, but you also have this explore functionality, for example, that will really let you look at the inside of a PDF document. And this is very useful for me, for example, when I get questions from you, from customers, but it is typically probably a little bit less useful in your case. So what I've focused here, what I focused on in this short presentation is the areas that I think are the most useful in your particular case. So let me go back to my presentation for a second because I had some questions. Well, first question is how can I know what is going on in my document? And then, of course, that answer has been given already a little bit with the visualizer, but what if I want to know what this particular image is, for example, or whether this is really text or it has been outlined? Are there ways to look at that? And I will make this a little bit bigger, and then I will go back to view. And under view, as part of this visualizer functionality, there are a couple of things that we have not talked about. An object inspector is the one that I will show you. So if I click on object inspector, I get this side panel again. And then when I move my mouse, when I hover my mouse over the document, it will show me all the objects that I have under the mouse. And I can click. When I click, it freezes the list of objects I have here. And so where I clicked, I have this image, I have a vector element, another vector element, another vector element. So it really shows me all of the different layers that I have in that file. And it shows me the properties of that object that I clicked on. So in this case, this is an image. It shows me how many pixels I have in the image, what that means in terms of effective resolution in the document, color space, compression ratio, compression method, and so on and so on. Yeah, this can be really handy if you have a PDF document that has problems, that behaves erratically, or you send something to a printer and you get it back and you want to figure out why. Well, this can actually help you to figure out how a document is constructed. For example, if I go to this text line, same thing. This is a text line. It will show me the font that was used, what type of font, whether it is embedded or not, and whether it is subsetted or not. So in this case, it's embedded, but not subsetted. It's completely embedded. It shows me the color that is used and so on. So a lot of information. The other cool thing is that, let's say that I wonder whether all the text in this document is real text or it has been outlined. Well, I have two nice things here at the bottom of this panel. The first is that I can see my document as a wireframe again. And the second is, and they can be used together as well, the second is that I could switch off the text. And if I switch off the text, all the text in my document disappears. So in this case, it has not been outlined. It is real text. If it was outlined, it would disappear when I deselect vector objects. If I deselect images, I could take a look at whether there is anything behind this image. So the object inspector lets you play with how you look at your document and can help you to understand how the document was constructed and why it might be going wrong in a particular case. Okay. So remember that you have that in the visualizer section as well. Second question was, how can I downsample images, but then downsample them without some kind of threshold in there? And that's actually a good question, because normally what you would do is use a threshold, and I will go back to my profiles window, but instead of going to profiles, I will go directly to fix-ups. So I get my profile window, but now the third tab is active immediately. And I'm interested in downsampling, so I can make my life easy and say downsample. And the more I type here, it is only going to show those fixes that have something to do with downsampling. Now, remember that we're on the fix-up tab right now. So these are not profiles that are a combination of checks and fixes. Now I'm looking at the individual fixes that I could then later group together in a profile. What I have here is this is the default way this is typically done, and this is what you will see in your library as well. This is a bit annoying because it's part of a locked profile, so it is hard to see. I will duplicate it. That way you can see it a little bit better, and I could modify it as well. So this is the normal way downsampling of images would be done, where I say I want to downsample to a particular effective resolution, and I want to downsample images only if they are above a different value. So what does this mean? Well, if an image is 200 dpi, nothing happens because it is under the downsample limit. It's also another problem. If an image is 300 or 350 dpi, still nothing happens because it's under the limit that I have here. It's only when an image is 450 dpi or more that it will be downsampled, in this case to 300. Now, how do I do that when I want to force that immediately? Well, I created a nice example here. This one will look at images that are over 96 dpi, and it will force downsampling for all images over 96 dpi. So simply have the same value in both fields, and that will make sure that all images in the document are downsampled to that fixed resolution that I have. Now, this fix I can test individually, so I could simply run this particular fix, tell pdfToolbox where this needs to be saved, and then it will downsample my image to 96. You can see that it did that downsampling. I can even see on how many objects it did the downsampling in this case. This is correct. There is only one image in this document, so that's what it has downsampled now. But of course, I could create this fix and then I could put it in a profile together with a whole bunch of other things that I want to do. So if I wanted to create a profile to make a proof for a customer, I could include my new fix in that profile to create documents that are much smaller than the production version. So is that possible? Yes, of course it's possible. And I just showed you an example of how I can do that. And then the question after that is related to that, but it was a little bit different in the sense that, well, the question here was, will you see this document, and to someone who understands how PDFs work and how QuarkXPress works and how graphic arts workflows work, this makes complete sense. I have bleeds, I have all kinds of other information in the border, but we know that what will be printed is the trim box. Not all clients know that that is the way it works, and they might get confused. So can I somehow create a version of a document in an easy way, create a version of the document that my customer will understand? Well, of course you can. And I'm going to take a little bit of time to show this to you, because I want to show you a couple of different things. And then we're going to put it all together and make it very easy to use. So the first thing is, what do I want? Well, in my case, it would be nice if the content outside of the trim box was clipped away, because people don't understand bleed, or at least not everyone understands what bleed is. So I want everything that is outside the trim to be gone. I want all the page boxes to be the same, so that when they open this in Adobe Reader or some stupid application that understands PDF, even on an iPad or whatever, that it still looks the way I intended to look for this client. And then what would also be cool in my particular case is that I would like some indication I would like to show the clients what the safe area is. So I want to mark a little bit around the trim box to show where his content should be, to avoid that he comes too close to the trim box. Of course, you don't have to do all of these things, but it's an example. Can we do that? Well, I want to do a number of different things, and that means that I will need to create a number of different fix-ups. So that's the first thing. And I will, as an example, build one of these fix-ups for you so that you can see what is going on. And then I have built some other examples to save some time here. But let's start with the first one. Can I do something that clips everything outside of the trim box? Well, we can create a fix-up. And then pdfToolbox basically allows me to give that thing a name. So I could say, clip everything outside of trim box. I hope I gave it a different name for the one I already prepared, or pdfToolbox is going to complain at the end, but we'll fix that. So I give it a name that I understand. And then, and this is typically the hard part with pdfToolbox, you have to understand where these fixes are and what they are called. But trust me, in this case, we want to do something with a fix-up called create and apply shapes. Why? Well, create and apply shapes allows me to define a shape, and then it allows me to do something with that shape. And that's what I want. I want a shape that is the same as the trim box, and then I want to clip according to that shape. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So which shape do I want? I want to create that shape from the trim box. You can see that you have some stuff here to adjust, so I could make it a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller. In my case, I just want the trim box, and then I want to clip everything outside of the trim box. So I'm going to say clip existing page content. And finding this create and apply shapes might have been a little bit difficult, but you can't complain about how easy it was to configure. I simply say from trim box and I say clip. So let's save this. And it's saved here in my list of fix-ups. And when I now run this on my file, and I'm simply going to overwrite my input file, this is what I end up with. So pdfToolbox has identified the trim box, and it has used the trim box as a clipping mask. Everything outside has now been hidden. I could also physically remove those objects if I wanted to, but in this case, I have simply hidden everything outside of the trim box. Now, If you open this in Reader or in Adobe Acrobat, you might still have a little issue because the trim box is not the same as the media box, and there might be some confusion for my client. So this is not good. And I think I prepared something for that, and it's called Clean Up Page Boxes, and I can run this fix as well. So I will say fix, overwrite my original file. There you go. Now it has redefined all of the page boxes to the same size of my trim box. And if you remember, I wanted something else. I wanted to have a visual indication of the safety zone, and I created a little fix. Same thing again, I say fix, I say save, overwrite, and so on. And now it's added a little rectangle where the safe type zone is. So my client can see that indeed, or I can see that indeed there is nothing outside of that area that I should be concerned about. And of course, you can do this in a very different way. Yeah. So all of these things are possible. However, you already saw that it is a little bit time consuming. I have to find these different fixes. I have to run them one by one. I have to overwrite my document. This is simply not acceptable, of course. And I have a better idea. So I'm going to go back to my original. And in this same profile window, instead of working with individual fixes, well, I created them, so I have those fixes. I'm now going to go into profiles. And there I'm going to say create process plan. It's important that you say create process plan, not profile, process plan. When you do that, you get this user interface. And I'm going to call this cleanup file for my clients. And then I know what I want to do with that. I want this clipping and so on again. So I will go to fix up and say add. And pdfToolbox shows me a list of all of the fix-ups that I have in my document. And we called ours clip everything outside of the trim box. That's the first thing that is going to happen. Now I want another fix-up. And that one was something like clean up, I think, clean up page boxes. And I want a third one, and that had something with visualize in it, visualize safety zones. So a process plan is a sequence of different steps that you want to run on a PDF document. Yeah, and these steps are executed one after the other. So when I save this, I can say I have my document, I have my cleanup file for my client's process plan. I say analyze and fix. pdfToolbox will ask me where I want to save the output file, and then it will go through these different steps for me, and I have the result that I want. Yeah. There is one little improvement that we can do, and that is that now this process plan is in my profile window, and I'm fine with that. It's actually very, very easy, especially because you can search in this, but you can also have it in your switchboard. So if I go back to the switchboard, these easy buttons, remember, I can go to Workspace. In Workspace, I have things that I often use. So in my profile window, I select cleanup file for my clients. And I say add to Workspace. And there is a button that appears in that workspace in the switchboard. And now if I click that button, I have a little execute, and that will do exactly the same thing as my process plan, but it is now available together with everything else I frequently use in my switchboard. So depending on what you think is the easiest way to deal with this, you can add these things to the switchboard. You can use them from the profile window, whatever you prefer. Typically, I end up using the profile window because of what I said before, because in here I can make groups to group things together, but I can also use simply typing. So if I know that I want to do something with PDFX, then I select the PDFX related things in my profile window, and that's for me is often easier. Okay, last two questions I have here, and they're very quick, and then I will look at all other questions I have received. Can I take a document and certify it as a pdfX4 document? So can I take a document that was exported by QuarkXPress and then somehow make it compliant with pdfX4? Along the same lines, can I take a pdfX4 file and convert it to a pdfX1a file? The answer is yes, of course, in both cases. So let me go back to my original document here. This is a file that was exported from something. I don't know what it was. I could go look at the metadata part, and then it would show me somewhere. Oh, this is generated by QuarkXPress 4.11, it looks like. It's not a pdfX document. I know it's a good document, but it's not a pdfX document. So how do I certify that as a PDF file? Well, I can take a pdfX profile, and you have all of those. It's not like you have to make them. If you look at your copy of pdfToolbox desktop, you will have a library called PDF standards. You also have a library called prepress color and transparency. These pdfX profiles are in both of those libraries, so it's easy enough to find them. And here I have one that says convert to pdfX4, and the output intent profile will be PSO coated v3. Okay, so when I run analyze and fix, pdfToolbox asks me again where I want that output document, and I can put it on my desktop. It will run through all of the fixes that are part of this profile, and it makes it into a pdfX4 document. Now, this is pdfX4, meaning live transparency is allowed. So if there is transparency in the document, it was not flattened at this point. What pdfToolbox simply did was add the pdfX4 metadata to this document, and if there were any problems, it has fixed them along the way. Second part of that question was, hold on, if I have a file or a pdfX4 file, it actually doesn't make any difference. Can I convert that into a pdfX1a file, meaning flattened transparency and so on? And the answer, of course, is again, yes, I can, let's call this one X1a, and I can convert that pdfX4 file into a pdfX1a file. You can see the badge has changed to indicate that this is now a pdfX1a file, and you can see the steps that it went through to convert that file. Of course, these fix-ups that you see here, you see a color convert fix-ups and so on. These could all be modified and adjusted to what you need in your particular workflow. Okay, I think that is what I wanted to cover. So let me see what other questions we have that have not been answered yet, and we'll take a look at that. So, can we distill from PostScript to PDF? I already answered that. The answer is yes, and it uses the same settings as Acrobat Distiller would use, so you can simply use those. It actually also uses that engine. Can you set up bleed beyond the cut marks? The answer to that is yes as well. You've seen that there are multiple ways to create bleed. You could either scale up the file, so just the page content, with a couple of % so that bleed is present, or you can say mirror page content or stretch the last pixel. All of those are ways to create bleed in a document. Pretty advanced question. Question about color management. Can pdfToolbox fix over inking? The answer to that is yes and no, and it can become a little bit more complex. But in, well, actually what you can do here is you have the ability in pdfToolbox, but it is not built in. So you have to be a little bit careful with that. If I go to the switchboard and I go to color, and then I would go to device link conversion, I have an option in pdfToolbox that is called the device link option, and that option gives you a number of device link profiles. Those profiles can be used to, for example, where is my, here, I have a device link profile in that set that would convert everything and convert it to a 300% ink limit. Yeah. So one option is to do this with pdfToolbox using a device link profile, and you can do that with one of these device link profiles, but these device link profiles require a payable option to pdfToolbox. If you have your own device link profiles or a device link profile from a printer or a client, then you can use those always. So that is always supported in pdfToolbox. You don't need an option for that. You can just take that existing device link, import it, and then work with that. And there are also other options. For example, we work with the ColorLogic software as well. ColorLogic has device link packs that also support ink reduction. They also support ink save and so on, and those will work inside of pdfToolbox as well. So there are some options, but some of these options will require some payable device links unless you have your own device links. Other than that, you can also, of course, change colors in pdfToolbox, and that could work if we're talking about text or line art where you have a solid color. But if you're also dealing with images and if you want to reduce the ink amount in the complete document, then your best option would be using a device link option, a device link profile that was built directly or specifically for that. Are proof sheets customizable? They are. It takes a little bit of work to create these things the way you want. And that is something that either you can get training for to do yourself, there is documentation about it, or you could ask someone to do this for you. That's something that we do as well. But let me, just to show that this is indeed customizable, let me show you an example. So if I would go to create landscape proof, this is another example. So I feel obliged to use a penguin again. If I run this on my file, it creates a proof. This is actually a little bit more of an intelligent example where I also use variables. So it asks me information about this particular file. And I could say that this is we're doing a webinar, so I'll call it that. I have to do it in caps right here because I add a specific, you'll see that in the next step, I add a specific type of barcode that only supports uppercase characters. So this is another proof example. You see that it looks completely different. It uses a landscape version. It uses a different background. It adds information to the proof with these variables, and it even adds a barcode as part of the process. So pdfToolbox is very flexible. It can do all of those things. Like I said, it takes a little bit of time to figure out how to do this, and that's definitely something that we can help with. But it could either require training or some payable service to create this layout once. But once you have it, of course, you can use it for whatever you want to use it. More questions. I think you have the record in terms of questions today. That's really cool. Does the standalone application have an option similar to Acrobat's reduced size PDF feature? Similar, yes. So if we go back to, and I don't think I have one in there. I would have to think where this is, but for example, this is an example of a profile that goes in that same direction. So basically the way to do this in pdfToolbox would be to create a profile, and in that profile have all the fixes that you want to reduce file size. And that could include throwing away third-party information, throwing away metadata that you have in the file. I've seen documents that have more metadata than content, so that is sometimes a good one. But if this is for a proof or an online PDF, you could also convert to sRGB. You could recompress all the images with a higher compression factor. You can downsample images. You can throw away everything outside of the trim box. So basically you would build a profile, and you can, again, as I did before, I could say duplicate from this example profile and then put some more fixes in there or remove some stuff that I don't like. But you can build a profile and you would run that profile to create the low resolution version that you're interested in. Is there a document viewer to make easy navigation plus move pages around or delete them? That is a very good question. The only thing that is available at the moment, and it could be sufficient or not, so navigation in pdfToolbox standalone is a little bit more cumbersome than within Acrobat at the moment. I know that that is on the list to improve, but what you do have here is organize pages, and let me open, I apologize for all the penguins actually, but let me open this one and then go to organize pages. So now I have 3 documents open, and what I could do is I could pick and choose which pages I want in here and put them in the order that I want. And now I can save this as so this document I can save as a new document. So this gives you some way to see the pages in one document and reorganize them, or to see pages in multiple documents and then apply that. And in this case, it would create a new document for me with the result. So there are some possibilities around that. More questions. Can I reduce the size of the PDF? Luckily, that one has already been answered. So yes, if you make a profile that does that. Oh, okay, so no, it's a different question. Can I, for example, do A3 to A4? So not the size, not the file size, but the page size. Yes, you can do that. I can do it in the Switchboard, or I can do it as part of a profile. In the Switchboard, I would have to go to Pages, and under Pages, I have, for example, Scale to Format, and there I can select a predefined format. So I could say whatever this is, scale it to A4, and then I have some scaling strategies, either stretch, which would be non-proportional, or proportional scaling strategies as well. This list is customizable, so you can modify which page formats you see in that list. The same in a profile. I can again go into fixes. I don't know if I have an example of that here. Yes, so for example, this one is one that will scale to A4. Yeah? So that's definitely a possibility. How can I display the colored areas? Very good question. I assume that everyone just has that. So where do these things come from? Because I don't have that when I install pdfToolbox Desktop. Good point. Go to Preferences. Under Preferences, you have highlighting, and under highlighting, it will say Show Page Geometry Boxes, and that's only the outline that it will show. And then Show Names will also show you these little badges. So you can either remember what each color means, or you can also show the badges. I find, maybe it's because I'm getting old, I find that I always forget what each color means, so I display the page box badges as well. Let me see. Okay, question about the presentation itself. Can I see this again? Yes, this is going to be recorded. It is actually recorded. So once we are done with this presentation, then we'll convert the recording so that it's visible on the website. We will send all of you that are registered for this webinar will receive an email with the URL to the recording, and that will probably just be on YouTube or Vimeo. So you can review parts of it and go over it, because I know that this is a little bit fast when I go from one to the other. I have an advantage. I've been working with pdfToolbox for the last 7 or 8 years. That makes it a little bit easier for me. But you'll be able to go over that, and I will also ask Matthias to post it into the QuarkXPress Facebook group so that you have the information, the link available there as well. Okay, so Joel, you have a problem with activation. Easiest thing that you can do in that case is simply send us an email and we will sort it out. Either send it to orders@4ps.com. Just give us the information that you received from Quark. So once again, that is orders@4ps.com, or or you can put me in copy as well. So david@4ps.com. Just send us an email and we'll sort that out. That's not a problem. Can I give a colleague my self-created profiles? Yes, absolutely. Very good question. When I have profiles here and I modify them in some way, so I will go back to my library. Actually, you can make your own libraries in here as well. I don't want to go into all of the details because I'm already way over the time for this, but when you can either use the libraries that are built into the application, or you can go here to manage libraries and then you can build your own. Library is a group of profiles and process plans and fixes and checks, and that can be very, very useful. You can make a production library where you group everything that you frequently use, maybe a test library with stuff that is still in test. But that's not the question that was asked here. So let me go back to my pre-flight examples here. So we built this process plan. And now, of course, I also want to give this to my colleague because I don't want him to lose time in figuring things out for himself. Well, I can say export profile. I know it's called export profile, and this is a process plan that we selected, but that does not matter, I promise you. So you simply select the process plan or the profile, or even a single check or a single fix. You go there, it will always say export profile. And then when you do that, it will allow you to save. So I saved that on my desktop. What I get is something that has the same name as what I was working with in pdfToolbox. It has the extension KFPX. This is a regular file. You can give that to someone else. It is compatible between Mac and Windows. So if you're working on a Mac and your colleague is working on Windows, then it will still work. So you give it to your colleague. They can either do the same thing, so they can go to the profile window and say import, or to make things easier, I can simply drag it on top of the main pdfToolbox window, and then it will be imported as well. Yeah. So that definitely works. Simply create what you want, test it. When you're done with testing, you go to the process plan or the profile or the check or the fix, you say export, and that gives you a file that you can give to your colleague. Is there a way to embed to print at 100% instead of fit to window when you send out a proof? I'm assuming that you want to modify, well, there is metadata in the PDF file that can state how the PDF file is going to be opened. And I am not certain that this can be modified using pdfToolbox. That's something that I would have to look up. I will do that. When you're asking, can I send a PDF so that it will be printed out correctly, automatic at the other end? I don't believe so, but I'm not 100% sure of that. I would have to look at the metadata in the PDF that we can set with pdfToolbox and then figure out whether that does the right thing in the print workflow. So Tracy, I will have to get back to you on that one. Can you advance through the current document without going down uncontrollably? Yes, so you can either scroll with your mouse wheel if you have that, but I've always refused to use this new Mac power mouse, so maybe that's why it works better for me. There are, I believe, also shortcuts that you can use. So if your keyboard has a page up and a page down, you can use those as well to scroll. But once again, I realized that page navigation in pdfToolbox Desktop at the moment is a little bit limited. That is on the list to look at and improve in the future. Is it possible to fix a file that has an ICC profile embedded to a non-profiled file? Well, I could say that depends on what type of file you're talking about, but actually it does not. It's always possible. So you have different types of ICC. No, actually, you have different ways in which an ICC profile may be embedded in a document. For example, if we take my example document again, this one, there is a PSO coated profile embedded. In this case, it's embedded as the output intent for this document. So this document has one embedded ICC profile, the output intent. Can I remove that? Yes, you can do that with a fix-up. You can also do it in the switchboard, if I'm not mistaken. I'm just going to have to hunt a little bit to where it is because I always forget. You would think that it would be there, but it's not. So let me see something else. Output intent. Luckily, we can also search here. So in the switchboard, when you look at output intent, you can either set an output intent or remove it. So if I would say remove, it would take away the output intent I have here in this document. Yeah, so that's a possibility. I can also include a different one. The other option is that you may receive files that have images that have an output intent, or sorry, an ICC profile attached to them. So this car could be an RGB image that has an sRGB ICC profile attached to it. Can you remove that? Yes, you can also remove that. So I can make a fix-up that throws away all the ICC profiles in the document, either by simply throwing it away or by using it to do a color conversion. So if this image would be RGB with an ICC profile, an sRGB profile attached, for example, I could use the sRGB profile to convert it to CMYK. That's the default behavior, by the way. And then the sRGB profile would be removed from the document and my image would now be CMYK, typically the CMYK I have in my output intent. So all of those things are possible. You will find example fix-ups when you go look at the prepress color and transparency library in pdfToolbox Desktop. Let me see. So recording, we answered. Yes, you will automatically get a link for that. Can I move objects in PDF? Yes and no, and you will probably not be happy with my answer, but I will give it anyway. Can I select this line of text and then move it to somewhere else? No, you cannot. You cannot do point and click editing. Can I move everything in the PDF or specific content in the PDF? Yes, there are fix-ups that you can build that. Let me very quickly go to move, and I think it's actually move objects. There we go. So this fix-up will allow you to move objects in a PDF document with a certain distance, and I can specify the distance as 0.1 millimeter or inch. So I could say move everything, well, I don't want to move it horizontally, but I want to move it up by 10 millimeters. Remember that, but you'll see that when you try it, but remember that the origin in PDF documents is at the bottom of the file. That is not the same for everything else, but in PDF, the origin is always at the bottom. So if I say 10 millimeter, I'm actually saying move this up by 10 millimeter. If I want to move it down, I could, of course, do minus 10 millimeter. And then you can specify which objects you want to move. And there are some predefined options here: text, vector objects, images. But I can also make my own preflight check. That's the rest of the list that I have here. is other preflight checks. And in that case, only those objects would move that are found by that particular preflight check. And I will give you a stupid example. If I use the preflight check spot color is used, then only those objects would be moved that use a spot color, and everything else will remain in place. So can I move objects? Yes, but not doing point and click. You can do that in Acrobat. You could also do that with something like InFocus PitStop Pro, but that you cannot do in pdfToolbox. But you can make a fix-up that would move all the content in the document or specifically targeted content in that document. Okay, let me see if there are any other questions. No, I don't think so. I think I answered everything. I will review this after the session, and if there is anything that was not answered, we will come back to you. If you think that I forgot something or my answer did not completely satisfy what you wanted to know, please do not hesitate. Simply send me an email. Email address, once again, is david@4ps.com. That will put you in contact directly with me. If you have questions in general, technical questions about pdfToolbox, email addresses for that would be support@4ps.com or support@callassoftware.com. Both will work, and then you'll get an answer from one of the technical people. By the way, 4Ps is the international distributor of all of the Callas products. So Callas focuses on the development, 4Ps focuses on selling the solutions, also supporting it towards you guys, towards customers and partners and so on. So that's why we do these webinars. That's why we do all of these activities around pdfToolbox. Asking something to support@4ps.com or support@callassoftware.com is exactly the same. Your question will end up in the same support box, and we will look at that. People from Callas will look at that. That's no problem. You can write either in English or in German, or even in French or Dutch if you prefer. We'll handle all of those languages. That's also not a problem. You might receive an answer back in English to avoid many mistakes in written French, for example, but we understand all of those languages. And I will end this presentation by answering one last question from David. David, it cannot make coffee. I apologize, it cannot do that. However, I usually drink tea anyway, but I still have not found a way to make tea with this as well. So I have to disappoint you on that account. And with that note, thank you everyone for joining in such big numbers. Thank you for staying, even though this was a pretty long webinar. If you have any more questions, don't hesitate to send them in. We will probably organize another one of these sessions in the future. You can keep track of that on our website. There it will say which webinars, and you can subscribe to any of them. They're all free. There is a help site that you can get to from our support website, from our website as well. So there is a support section, and you'll find the documentation and so on there as well. You'll find plenty of recordings of previous webinars. So knock yourself out. It's all there. It's all free. Use that. Ask questions when you get stuck. And well, lots of productive fun with your pdfToolbox. That's all from me. Have a very nice rest of the day. Goodbye.